Today we're going to make a space map, kind of like this, entirely in Dungeondraft. The first thing you're going to need is some assets. So check the links down below, and you will find this page, some examples, and you can download a demo of stellar cartography, which comes with a few of every type of planet and star. You're also going to want this guide image, and then Hellscape UI, which will let you do lines and markers and things like that. Now, this tutorial assumes you have some familiarity with Dungeondraft and how to load custom assets. So once you have those downloaded and somewhere accessible, I'm going to jump over to Dungeondraft, and you're going to want to make sure you have those packs enabled. So you just need UI and stellar cartography. These are just all the other packs that are available for patrons, and then we make a new map. I start a little bit larger than they need to be because you can always scale down. This is also an opportunity to set your selected asset packs. I like to disable wall shadow and object shadow by default. So here we are. And this is the real trick here. When we make our orbit lines, which are going to be made using Path Tool, we want them to remain circular. And that's really kind of hard to do on a grid. So the real trick is using the trace image feature. That's going to be in the settings here, trace image. And what you're going to do is you're going to click the folder icon, and you're going to load up the trace image that was available as a JPEG on that link. Once you have it loaded, we need to get it to the right scale. I believe for me, it was 2. What we're looking for here is to have these lines intersect with the grid. There's kind of an invisible grid that is at the center of each grid point. And if your snapping doesn't work like that, you need to go to Preferences and make sure Snaps at every half grid unit is turned on. What that's going to do is make it so objects can snap here and here. You can already see what's going on here. The guide is now going to show us where every other grid snap is and as it relates to a curve. Once that's set, make sure your opacity is where you want it, and we can start building. Now, I leave the default background initially because a dark space background is a lot harder to work with sometimes. And let's start with a star. So you will have all these tags. The demo pack doesn't come with as many assets, so this is what the full pack looks like. The demo pack will have your basic star colors. The full pack has a full RGB sweep, and these are not just recolors. Each star is unique, it has different flares and sunspots, and yes, there are some unrealistic colors in here, just in case you have a sci-fi reason to have a green star. So I'm going to grab an orange one here, and keep an eye on your scale. You're going to want to set this to 1, just to start with. It's kind of up to you what style you want. I'm going to go with a fairly small star, and then it's time for planets and things. I like to do orbit lines first. So you have, it's hard to tell from the thumbnail, but you've got dashed lines, smaller dash, and solid. Unfortunately, as of this recording, paths are not colorable, so you just have a few default choices. Hit S to toggle snap on. You can also click it down here, and we can use those orbit lines as a guide. So clicking, and then I'm going to this next point here, holding shift and clicking again, and now I drag over until it's circular. Click, shift, click. There you go, perfect circle. Now, there are obviously some restrictions. Dungeondraft is not designed to make space maps. So we're trying to kind of bend it to our will here, but there are some things we just can't help. Our orbit lines are restricted, so long as we're using snapping, to these predefined areas. There are some tricks you can use though. You can try to manually do your orbit lines and do something that is not perfectly round, but you can see it's kind of hard to get it to look anywhere near realistic. Another option is to use the lines to build your initial orbit line, and then use the move tool. Now, unfortunately, once again, Dungeondraft does not allow non-uniform scaling, so it's going to remain circular, but you can offset it to give you something a little bit more interesting orbit-wise if you've got something that's got a funky orbit in your solar system here. I'm going to make this a fairly small system so I can kind of get to the point here. Moons, it's up to you how you want to show a moon orbiting another body. You could just put it on the same orbit line, or you can go ahead and make orbit lines and bring them in once they're created. We can scale that down and put it in place in advance. Let's get some planets going. I'm going to go into the object tool, and I'm going to go into the hot planet category. Don't mind my thumbnails, this just shows some older works. You should have a few lava planets available to you. Being inner planets, these guys are going to be really small. You can use snapping to get them right in place, but if you want to give them a different orbital position, you may want to turn snapping off with S. I'm going to do a rocky planet. And just to show you, all of these assets have a terminator line that is nearly right down the center. And all you need to do is just rotate that object with the mouse wheel to match its orientation so that the light appears to be coming from the star. You can hit G to toggle grid so you can see what it's going to look like. Now, you can see there's a pretty big snap in the size of objects, but you can get a lot more granular control by going over to scale and manually sliding it. Let's make this weird orbit an Earth-like, even though that's kind of ridiculous. Now, in the Earth-like category, we've got planets that are burning. Perhaps there was some sort of disaster, or maybe that's just how they are. We've got your normal Earth-likes that have cities. You've got Earth-likes without cities somewhere in here. We've got cloudy planets. We've got ice ball Earths. You may see some bugs, like Dungeondraft thinks that they're recolorable. They're not. Let's do one with a ring, though. Now, the moons, there are some basic ones that are recolorable, but that's the reason why I've provided so many options here. They're not just different variations, but they're also different colors. And this is a way to give you recolorable options that aren't using Dungeondraft's system, because there's a lot of color data lost when you use those. They're kind of monochrome, whereas these can have some variance to them. And let's do one big gas giant out here. Snap back on with S. You see that every other line is a different color, and then every other line of one color is a different pattern, dashed or normal. And that's just to help you quickly figure out which line you're looking at. I'm going to do a really big gas giant out here. Maybe there's a tech moon orbiting this gas giant. So the tech planets, as you can see, have all these Coruscant-style details. Just got to remember to rotate it to face the star. And again, doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but let's put an icy body out here. Take your time, get all your planets set up the way you like them, and at any time you can go in and toggle the trace image. I believe there's even a shortcut key, this T. We'll quickly toggle it so you don't even have to go into the menu. So let's get some stars in here. Go to the terrain brush, select your first layer, and locate hellscapes options. Here's a standard starry background, and then there are also some nebula. Another trick you can use to make the star look a little bit brighter is to go into the lighting, environment. As you can see, this kind of tints the map. We're just going to leave it fully desaturated and just bring it down a tiny bit so it's a little bit darker. Go to our light tool. We've got a glow effect that's provided. It's way too bright by default, so we're going to turn the intensity way down. I've got it scaled up pretty good. I'm clicking, scaling down with the mouse, clicking, scaling down with the mouse. So now I've got 3 lights sitting on top of each other right here. Each one's smaller than the next, and that gives a little bit of light bloom there. You toggle lighting, it's quick and easy to see what effect it's having. In paths, you'll have some asteroid options. The way these are set up, you can see that there's kind of a natural beginning and end, so that you don't end up with one asteroid that's cut off, stopping somewhere like that. This might be a good use of the trace image, doing exactly what I do with orbit lines. So if you make a mistake when you're making a path, you can hit backspace and not lose all your current work. Okay, we can both see the problem right off, which is that you get a little bit of repetition there. So what I tend to do is turn snap off, change the transition to fade or grow and shrink, and just go in and add some more over the gaps. So another way to fill in asteroids here is to go to the scatter tool, asteroid category, select our asteroids, set our scale way lower, but give it a little bit of variance. Now we can just scatter asteroids wherever we want. I'm going to turn the spread down, and so you can go in and with some variation. You can use these to add planetoids, but we actually have dedicated planetoid objects provided as well. These are much larger, so you can scale them up a lot more. You can use those just like any other planet. You will also have some overlay effects. So if I switch to over, I really want this planet to be a very specific color, or maybe it's radioactive, I don't know. You have this recolorable overlay. You can set to whatever you want. You can even come in afterwards and change it. Okay, I'm happy with that. Perhaps you would want to add labels. That is where the UI pack comes in. You could perhaps do this on a different layer. I go to the level settings, create a new layer. Check compare levels so we can see what's underneath. And this way, you can separate these things and have them exported on top of your map, or you can just have the map without them. If possible, I would do text in another program. Dungeondraft is a little sketchy when it comes to text, but it can be done with the text tool here. You can fill out your system with all your details. Once you're happy, time to export. Make sure you hit G to turn off the grid. Go to export. And you know the drill. This will be a very large image, so you may want to first crop, and second, change your DPI to something lower. And there you have it, JPEG image of your star system. I screwed up the crop a little bit there, and you don't have to make your maps in this format. You can also do Elite Dangerous style layouts like this, which just show you the order of the planets instead of the orbital paths. So that's it. That's how you make space maps in Dungeondraft. If you like these assets and you want hundreds more of them, all of my patrons have access to all 497 stellar objects, as well as all the other asset packs I make for Dungeondraft, which let you make maps like this for sci-fi, modern, post-apocalyptic settings. So give it a try. Feel free to drop by our Discord and show us the cool stuff you make, and take care.